Welcome to the FYI on Youth Ministry, a podcast from the Fuller Youth Institute. This season is all about youth ministry, burnout, and resilience. And today's episode is about what we heard from you about youth ministry, burnout, and resilience. We are your hosts for this season. I am Roslyn Hernandez, project manager and podcast producer at FYI.
And I'm LaTasha Nesbitt. I serve as the research director here at FYI. So excited to be here today.
Yay! I'm so excited for this season because it is very important for us to talk about this. This is a very real issue that I think, we need to be more aware of. So
Absolutely.
Let's jump right in. LaTasha, let's start with our why. Why is this important to us? Why did we do this in the first place?
So with the Youth Leader Checkup Project, we had the opportunity to sit down with youth leaders, youth pastors from across the nation and hear about some of their success and some of their struggles. They don't have positions that serve at the periphery of ministry, but their position, in my mind, as those that are purposeful. They have this generational impact. They get to just really pour into young people from all walks of life. And it's hard work. So we asked the question, have you ever considered leaving youth ministry? And some of the youth leaders, their tones were like lowered. And they were like, actually, yes. So we found that 50% of those that we served and asked the question, 50% said they had considered leaving their roles because of the struggles that they experienced while being a youth leader. But the hope that we found was that 70% of those that we interviewed, they also said, yeah, it's hard work, but in the next 5 years, I see myself remaining not one as a youth leader in the world as a youth leader, but also I see myself in this faith community. I still see myself here. You saw the heart of their commitment through this interview. So excited that we get to hear from them.
Yeah, I think, something that stands out for me as a why is that, as we heard in the interviews, not a lot of youth leaders get recognition or even just acknowledge, not even like an explicit recognition or like saying thank you. I'm not even talking about that, but just like being valued in little ways. Not a lot of youth leaders get those kinds of acknowledgements, and I really want this season to be a season where we let youth leaders know that we see them.
Absolutely.
And that we, as you said, we hear your struggles and we see you and we recognize that you're doing hard work and you're doing, as you said, work that's generational, that is setting up people for their adulthood, and that is a really important part of our faith communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in our research process, we did surveys, we did interviews, and then we spent a lot of time, so much time.
Lots of time.
LaTasha was one of the main data analyzers, but yeah, we spent a lot of time looking at our data, doing the coding, looking at patterns, and looking for insights. So, LaTasha, how many leaders did we listen to? And how many people from our team did it take to listen to all of these leaders? And in total, how many hours of listening did we do?
Oh, my goodness. You're talking to a researcher here, right?
Yeah.
And you're a researcher. So the accuracy of these numbers are probably on the minimum side.
Okay.
So our research happened, as you noted, in 2 phases. We did a survey. We surveyed over 1,100 individuals from across the nation who said, I'm a youth leader and I serve in the church, and I want to make my voice known. At the end of that survey, we asked one particular question. Hey, would you like to talk further? And about 60%, over 600 said, yeah, I want to talk further. Because I'm a qualitative researcher by training, I love to hear stories. I'm a pastor at heart. I want to know your struggles. I want to understand your why. So I was geeking out, literally. Literally geeking out over the fact that so many youth leaders wanted to talk to us further. 12 individuals from our team that said, hey, I'm going to help with this process. So our team served as interviewers, and we took a 2-week period to talk to the individuals. We didn't get to talk to all 600. We were able to talk to 69 of the 600 and the wealth of information that was shared there. Oh my goodness, is just unbelievable. To hear the richness of those stories is just absolutely incredible. So each interview lasted about 60 minutes. So just doing the calculations, so that's about 70 hours worth of interviews. Beyond the actual interview audio, we spent hours cleaning the data, coding the data. So about 3 hours per interview. So I would say on the low end, nearly 400 hours of just preparing the data after the interview. So 400 plus the 70, approximately 500 hours from doing the interviews, cleaning and coding the data, where it's to a point of being understood and synthesized and understanding what we learned. So my team, or this team, FYI, oh my God, kudos to you guys for stepping in, coming in clutch for sure, making that happen. So.
Yeah, and those are 500 hours, that we do not just because we're geeky and we like research. We do it because we want to help and we want to listen to youth leaders. And we are doing the work that we do because we want to resource them. And we're trying to find out, being nosy about what causes burnout and like what helps to prevent burnout, because we want to share that with youth leaders.
Absolutely.
We want them to feel like they are heard and like they can work in a more proactive way to stay in youth leadership in their ministries where you said they feel called to be in.
That's it.
Yeah.
So we are nerds, though. We are nerds, though, Roz.
We accept that. We own it.
Absolutely. Hilarious.
We own it. Well, yeah. Well, I'm curious, what are the top 2 research highlights for you from this research?
Oh, Roz, this is a question.
It's hard, I know.
Questions. Oh, my goodness. Okay. I have so many favorite stories. I did about 11 or 12 interviews. Of course, you have your questions that you're going to ask, but based on some of those answers, new questions pop up. So I have so many favorites, but my top 2 favorites had to do with the contributors of burnout, because, that was a driving question for us. We wanted to know what those things were. And we had three top contributors that we actually will emphasize and learn more about. But the bottom 2, one was the lack of appreciation that youth leaders experience. We asked, hey, tell us about a time that you felt appreciated or recognized in your ministry. It was a long delay between us asking that question and them being able to answer it. I recall one individual had been on her job for 5+ years, and she was able to recount after moments of silence, like, oh, that the first year that I came, they brought me balloons on my birthday, and they, said they appreciated the work that I did. Oh yeah, that's when it happened. And I highlight this as one of my favorites because I see it as something that's fixable. It's easy to fix this. So that's why I called that one out. One, because it was heartbreaking to understand that they had to search so intently to answer that question. The next one was the lack of impact. Youth leaders felt burned out because they didn't believe that they were making a difference. And of course, heartbreaking because they're in the trenches. They are doing the hard work. They are doing life with young people. They serve as mentors. But even beyond that, they share their phone numbers and they receive text messages in the middle of the night, and they're talking through all kinds of issues. We had some youth leaders share about suicide attempts and serious things of that nature. Sometimes you're doing the work so much that you don't understand the power of what you're doing. You don't understand the effect. Maybe there are other youth leaders that have felt the same way, but didn't have an opportunity to voice that concern. But it creates a community of sorts when there are shared struggles. So I'm
Okay.
excited that some of their stories will be shared. But those are two of my favorites.
I also think those are some of the ones that I would name. Everyone will get to see the report as it has been released, but I think something that is helpful for youth leaders would be to hear these composites, which are these kind of stories that we put together based on different quotes from different interviews that kind of relate an idea of the different places where youth leaders might be. So we have 3 that we're going to share with you, and these are not going to be in the report because these are a little bit different for the podcast, although we are going to talk about the profiles that came from the report a little bit later. But the 3 that we have for today are a thriving youth leader, a youth leader that is neutral in their ministry, not thriving and not surviving, just kind of in the middle, and a youth leader who is surviving in youth ministry.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's hear those composites. So here's the composite for a thriving youth leader.
Oh, I feel supported by leadership. So, for example, my supervisor checks in on my well-being all the time. He'll ask if I'm spending quality time with my wife or keeping up with my exercise or even taking days off. He's been really good about that. And, while everyone in the church staff has ministry scars, there's a shared sense of respect and understanding. There's conflict, of course, but I feel like it's handled well. I'm also not alone. I mean, I really can rely on the group of volunteers that we have. We have a group text where we regularly pray for and celebrate one another. Just last week, one of our volunteers got engaged and the whole group rallied around him to celebrate. It was really, really fun. And when we need more help, the congregation steps up, whether it's fundraising for an event or extra volunteers or even a heartfelt thank you. Like those supportive things remind me that they value our ministry and the youth that are in the ministry. I feel like I have a good work-life balance. If I'm intentional about my calendar, I can get enough exercise. I can get time with my friends or family. I can get rest. I've really learned to focus on what's within my capacity. And, I try and trust God with everything else. That mindset really has kept me from overstepping my limit. That and the support of leadership, the amazing volunteers, loving congregation, they keep me really motivated. I know I'm not alone, and that really does make all the difference.
This is a composite for a youth leader who is neutral in ministry. Having a team that I can collaborate with and trust is really refreshing. I didn't have that in my previous church. Leadership is supportive and they don't always understand youth ministry, but they give me space to make decisions, which is awesome. What I'd love is more volunteer support. I have a few, but I can't delegate much because they're not very consistent. They lead during small groups, but I still hold a lot of the responsibility. And financially, it's really tight. I'm bivocational and I'm a mom, so I juggle multiple priorities. My husband and I make ends meet, but we don't make enough for vacations or other fun stuff. And the balance between ministry and my personal life, they don't teach me about setting boundaries in Bible college. It's something I've had to learn the hard way. I don't always prioritize mental or physical health, but I do get together with friends or spend time with family when I can. And as a mom and a pastor, I wonder, how do I do both of these well? Male pastors have their families at events like camp. Their wives, they can be there too, but for me, it's just not that simple. I'm grateful and I love my job, but I'm just finding ways to stay in it without overextending myself. It's not perfect, but it's manageable. And for now, that's just enough. You're not sick anymore. Okay. Hey, give me just a second to get him settled and I'll be right back. And here's a composite for a youth leader who is surviving in ministry.
I'm called to ministry, but right now it's just hard. Leadership support is almost non-existent. I don't have enough volunteers, and the ones I have need youth ministry training, and it feels like I'm constantly juggling impossible demands. Oh, and get this. My team actually wanted to try something new, and we got so much pushback. Without proper support, training, or even acknowledgement for our work, it feels like the system is just set up to fail. And it can be so isolating that sometimes I just feel invisible. Financially, it's tough. I'd love to be able to just retire one day or even just live comfortably. But right now, I feel stuck, and the constant financial stress is this weight on my mental health. Sometimes it feels like the church just assumes I should be happy just doing what I love. But I'm a whole person with a family and bills to pay and responsibilities and needs outside of my job. Honestly, I've thought about looking for another ministry position or even just leaving the ministry altogether and taking a 9 to 5. I mean, I love ministry, but I don't really like my job right now. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep going like this. I want to believe there's a path forward, but right now, I'm just surviving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
As I heard the 3 different composites, I was able to go back to my real life interview sessions with youth leaders and pinpoint at least a person under each composite. I would say a majority of those that I encountered in my session was an amalgamation of all 3, but a highlight in the neutral composite. The neutral composite youth leader, it reminded me of these outside factors that contribute to burnout. We have to expand our thinking in that the burnout doesn't just happen because of work, but there are competing factors outside of that. There's real life, and life be lifing, as the young people say. And when we were in these interviews and thinking about that neutral composite, there are so many youth leaders that spoke to outside factors like relationships and relational dynamics of, becoming a significant other, being single in ministry, as opposed to those around them who were married, and how they felt ostracized in some of those situations, or trying to maintain a relationship, and how relationships by themselves are just hard work because we're complex people trying to bring 2 lives together, balancing being a mom, being a dad, being able to say, okay, I'm pouring to the youth, but making sure I can have energy to play with my 5-year-old, to engage with my high schooler because they're getting set to go off on college. So being able to balance real life was a consistent theme that came up in our conversation. So I see a lot of issues with balance. But of course, you had those individuals that had the supportive leaders, supportive congregants, the finances that they needed, and they were well resourced. But the fact of the matter is, in our research, more than half of the churches represented were less than 200. So it wasn't a big, wealthy congregation. It wasn't a mega ministry type of situation where funding and finances and resources just flowed and flowed. So, it's good to be reminded of those.
Yeah, I think, and exactly as you mentioned, a lot of them fall into the neutral with aspects of the thriving and the surviving as an amalgamation in there. But what we did find in the research, or the profiles that came out, is that youth leaders might be feeling like they're one of these composites at different times of the year.
Good.
So like we found out is that in the summer, and you all know because of all the summer events, the camps, the vacation Bible schools, or prepping for the fall, all of that stuff, it's the highest season of burnout for youth leaders, followed by the fall and the winter, which is when all the things keep happening, and you're also... You're also starting the ministry and getting ready for the holidays. So yeah, I think you might recognize yourself in one of these. You might recognize yourself in parts of all of these. And that's okay. And I think that's helpful for us to recognize that even when a youth leader is generally neutral or generally okay, they do go through seasons where they might need more rest, when they might be feeling more tired, when they are more busy, when the work-life balance is not great.
That's good. That's very good, Roz. And just wanting to highlight our 4 different phases of burnout. We call them the latent profile analysis. And this is just a fancy way of saying that there were 4 kinds of individuals that we saw prevalent in our research. Firstly, summer burnout. They represented 27% of the 1,100 that we surveyed early on. Fall and winter burnout, they represented 21%. And then hyper burnout, they were the lowest percentage. They only represented 6% of all the individuals surveyed. But hyper burnout meant that they were over 50% burned out all year long. And there were different competing factors, work and life and relationships and finances and issues with supervisors and all the things. And then low burnout. And these individuals, they were 46% of those that we studied. And they said, we only experienced burnout at a minute in comparison to everybody else all year long. We're pretty cool. We're chill. We're making it happen. And they're persisting. Thank you for highlighting that seasonality. Definitely something that we should be aware of and attuned to. Personally, as youth leaders, being able to advocate and speak up and say, hey, help. And then recognizing that sometimes we're so entrenched in the work that we do that we just go and we do and we go and we do. And sometimes we're not as self-aware about how it's impacting us. So I think there'll be good guidelines for people to tap into and say, hey, I didn't take the survey. I wasn't a part of the interviews, but can I find myself here? Yeah. And then making the necessary changes to adjust.
Yeah, I think something else that I just want to acknowledge that we weren't able to go too deep into this in our research is that gender does have an aspect of burnout. We had several interviewees that were women who mentioned, like we had in the neutral composite, women in ministry are asking themselves, can I be a mother and be a minister and be a pastor? Or I am also a pastor, even though I'm a woman.
Come on.
Or, feels like I have 3 jobs because I'm bivocational and I'm a mother. And, the mental load that motherhood or even just being a single woman or a married woman or a woman in a relationship does add burnout factors to youth ministry work or just to life.
Absolutely. I think we're both living examples.
It happens. We see you.
Yes. And you matter.
Yes.
You're a big deal, girl.
Yes, you
Big
go,
deal.
girl. The other thing that I think is more of a question that we might want to look more into is that burnout tends to be more prevalent in the younger generations, in the 24 to 35-year-olds than the 36 to 44-year-olds. And so I wonder if one of the factors is that the younger generation, younger millennials and Gen Z are more aware of like mental health and work-life balance and things like that.
That's good. And then even just looking at like the 55 plus, though they weren't a large part of the sample, we saw less burnout with them. So it's just thinking about because of life experience, because they have more wisdom and more experiences that they possibly know how to handle and therefore underreport, or they know how to handle and adjust to all the nuances of life and things of that nature. So age definitely is a thing that we didn't have a lot of time to explore, but
yeah, we
did see those.
And I think it's curiosities. We might dig back into that later.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, well, in this portion of the episode, we tend to have practical advice for our listeners. But today, we don't want to give you things to do or things to think about. Today, we just want to fill your cup. We just want to let you know that you are not alone, that we see you, that we heard you, that we see your hard work, that we see your calling, and that we see your sacrifices and your struggles. And we want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, for the things that people see, and the things that are not noticed. And we want to thank you for caring and for being faithful to your calling. Our young people are so blessed to have you on their team, and we are better as faith communities because of you.
So that was a little bit of gratitude and encouragement from us. But now we want to share with you some of the advice from other youth leaders that we interviewed for this research.
Make sure to ask for what you need. You may not always receive it, but it's important to voice your needs. And sometimes you may actually get what you want.
Keep going, but ensure you're not overstepping your bounds or trying to take on more than you're meant to.
Practice self-care. If you burn out, you won't be able to be there for yourself, your family, or the church community that you serve.
I have found 3 things to be essential in my role as a youth ministry leader. The first is knowledge, things like self-knowledge, job skills, learning new things like that. The second is having a supportive community around me. And the third is relationships with accountability partners and mentors.
Keep going, but also make sure you're listening to the Lord and your body. It'll tell you when it's time to slow down.
It's a blessing to be able to help others, but you can't give what you don't have. Fill your cup, then pour into the youth and your peers.
So, Pastor LaTasha, do you want to end this episode with a prayer for all our youth leader friends listening?
For sure, absolutely. When I thought about this episode and our time together, I was reminded of the scripture in Proverbs. It's at Proverbs 22 and verse number 6. And it says, train up a child in the way that he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Traditionally, when I thought about this particular scripture, I think about it from a parental standpoint, that parents get to train. But no, I see that after doing this research, that it's more for pastors, youth leaders. The work that you do have such generational impact that it's training, it's molding, it's equipping the next generation. And that's a big deal, not only to us here at FYI, but even to God. So I pray these prayers and give you this declaration that your work is necessary and not in vain. The work that you're doing will have a lasting impact. It will change generations. Your impact is undeniable. And remember, if you're not seeing the immediate impact of your work, remember Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 3, 6, and 9, that some of us plant, some of us water, and it's only God that provides the increase. So my prayer is that you continue planting seeds of love and seeds of hope that will burst forth in the lives of young people for the love of God that you're birthing in them. May you witness the fruit of your labor as young people encounter different people in their lives and make a difference in their families and their communities and their neighborhood, in our world. Thank you for all that you do. You're a big deal. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Well, that is all we have for you today. We will be back with another episode soon. And yes, thank you so much for your work. You are so needed for our communities, for the young people. And we hope that you are able to get some rest whenever you need it and support and appreciation. Thanks so much for listening today.
See ya.
This podcast is one of the many free resources produced by the Fuller Youth Institute. Check out the show notes for links to all of the resources mentioned in today's episode. Remember that you can watch this episode on the Fuller Youth Institute YouTube channel. Thanks so much for listening or watching.